Welcome back to Leeds Lately for another tactical preview, this time before the Newcastle game at the weekend. Before we get into this one though, if you could just hit that big button down below, that would massively help me out. And also check out the links in the description. My Etsy prints, designed by myself for Leeds United fans, are available down below, so go and click that and check them out. Anyway, today's video then is going to be talking about the Newcastle game. We're going to forget about the Arsenal game. Not entirely, but just for now, and we're going to forget about the Sheffield Wednesday game because they were both very, very poor. Both very, very poor. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Newcastle then, because Newcastle are a side where they are a lot better than Leeds and a lot higher in their kind of their development cycle, and they'll be playing European football again next season. So usually you'd say, okay, well, this is going to be another very, very tough fixture, and I do think it's going to be a difficult game for Leeds United. But that's not to say that it's not going to be possible, let's say, for Leeds to get something out of the game. Now, the reason I say that is because Newcastle have a number of injuries. So before we even start talking tactics, although we can just pop that up on the board there, usually in here you'd have Sandro Tonali being the kind of the ball-playing holding midfielder in here. And then ahead of him, you'd have Joe Linton on one side and Bruno Guimaraes on the other side. Having said that, though, Newcastle's injury list is as follows. Sandro Tonali, shoulder injury, no return date yet, currently being assessed and 25% chance of playing. Then you've got Joe Linton, who is groin/hip/pelvic injury. Another one, no return date, currently being assessed, 25% chance of playing. So that's two of their most important players in those midfield players. And it goes further than that. You look out wide to the left-hand side, somewhere usually that Anthony Gordon would be playing. Anthony Gordon is suspended for this game for his red card challenge against Virgil van Dijk, I think. So he is suspended for this game. And then also when you look at their defenders, you've also got Fabian Schär, who is out with a head injury, a concussion. So he'll be ruled out for this game as well. Then when you look up top, of course, Alexander Isak is still refusing to play. Apparently, at some point he might issue an apology or something. We don't know. But the point being that they haven't got him either. So they are very much weakened in their team. The bad news is Leeds are also weakened because when you look at our midfield, you'd usually have Ampadu, Stack and Tanaka. And it looks like it's going to be Ampadu's out with an MCL, and Tanaka is also out with an MCL. So we've also lost two of our most important midfielders. So we'll have Stack and they'll have Guimaraes. So probably our best midfielder and their best midfielder still in play. So it's not as much of an advantage as we might have thought. It looks like Leeds are probably going to have to play Longstaff, Stack and Gruev in there. Gruev, Longstaff, Stack seems to be what we probably will do in this game. So yeah, injuries are a big problem for both sides in this game. They've got more injuries to their attacking players as well. But it's important to note that Leeds also have their fair share of injuries. So for me, it's probably likely that their midfield will consist of Bruno Guimaraes, probably Jacob Ramsey, and then they're going to have to play someone in the holding midfield role. Now, usually when they didn't have anybody to play in the holding midfield role, it was actually Sean Longstaff that would come in and play that role. So I'm not sure who's exactly going to play that role for them, or whether they go into a bit more of kind of like an attacking three box-to-box midfielders instead. I imagine that Harvey Barnes will probably be coming in on one side and Elanga on the other, or potentially Elanga through the middle, because at the moment the only other kind of striker that they've got in the ranks is William Osula, who I think scored the other day. So that's what we're looking at in there, that there's a few issues for them in terms of options that they've got to pick. But let's talk about how Leeds might actually have to play against Newcastle and how Newcastle might play it against Leeds. Now, Eddie Howe traditionally was quite a high-pressing manager at his time at Bournemouth and his time at Newcastle. He's been quite a high-pressing manager, and ironically, that was one of the things that caused a lot of injuries to Newcastle over the last couple of years. So he's adopted a little bit more of an adaptable kind of philosophy now. So a lot of the time you would have seen that, say, Leeds were playing out from the back, you would have seen that you'd have a lot of Newcastle players high up here, really trying to squeeze up and press the opposition into making mistakes. And they got a lot of joy out of that, so they'd win the ball back. Obviously, they'd have people pouring forward and able to score goals. But with the fact that the midfielders that they have out, I think the fact this is away at Leeds, they're going to have a weakened side, and they're going to be... obviously, the Elland Road crowd is going to be on Leeds' side. I feel like they may actually revert to dropping in a little bit deeper. And they have done this a lot of times over the last season or so, where they actually drop into either a back four here. At times, Joe Linton had actually dropped in to make it a back five. And at times, they've actually had a full-on back five in terms of who they've brought onto the pitch as well. So you could see that it's a little bit of a 4-5-1 or even a 5-4-1 in the defensive phases for Newcastle, as they basically try to soak up pressure from Leeds United and then use people like Anthony Elanga on the break with his electric pace to try to get them up the pitch. So it's going to be a very interesting game, this one, because I do believe that actually on the face of it, it looks like Newcastle are the much more dominant side, and they're the side who are going to be playing European football this season. And for me, actually, when we have a look at it like this, I actually think that Leeds United are more likely to be the dominant side in this game, with the fact that we'll have Goodmanson and whoever plays on this left-hand side, maybe Okafor or Nonto. Nonto, I would say, has probably been better than Okafor in the minutes that we've seen him. So the fact that we're going to be able to try and pin them back whilst we make those overloads in those positions, I think that Newcastle actually may drop into a 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1 to essentially try to soak up the pressure and play on the break away at Leeds, which you wouldn't think usually, would you? You'd think that Newcastle would probably try to kind of impose their play on us a little bit more. But actually, with the injuries that they've got to key players in midfield and up front, I think they may be a little bit more conservative in this game and try to really sit in and defend against Leeds and then try to play forward through the lines. Of course, they've got quality. They've got quality in fullbacks that can come forward in of course, Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento. And in the attack and midfield, they still have quality in places. Players like Jacob Ramsey signed this summer. Of course, Bruno Guimaraes will still be in there. And there's a few more players who can provide that little bit of extra quality. But they do look thin on the ground for this game, and it does give Leeds an opportunity. I'm a little bit more confident for this one now, kind of looking into what injuries they've got, the way that they play as well. I think they will sit in a little bit more. The bad thing is, and I know I kind of said I didn't want to talk about the Sheffield Wednesday game, is we looked poor when trying to break down a low block against Sheffield Wednesday. And this was actually what you see here is very much like Sheffield Wednesday were trying to do. We would have as many players as possible kind of on the edge of the box, and we still weren't really able to create anything until the real latter stages of the game. The positive to take from that, though, is that when Jayden Bogle came on against Sheffield Wednesday, when Dan James came on against Sheffield Wednesday, and when Nonto came on against Sheffield Wednesday, they massively, massively helped us in terms of chance creation, and we probably should have been 2-3-1 up by the time the final whistle went, if not for some sitters by Calvert-Lewin and co. The other thing is, of course, you get Gabriel Goodmanson back, who is excellent and has really performed well against Everton. Somebody who has really good little bits of interplay, able to get round players and get in down the sides, cross balls into the box. If you can get Dominic Calvert-Lewin or a Metcher or somebody like that on the end of those, then that's where you get your joy, I think. In terms of personnel for this game, I'm going to tell you who I think the starting lineup should be for Leeds United, rather than particularly telling you what I think Farke's going to go with. For me, I think Peru needs a bit of a rest. I think it's got to be Mecha or Dominic Calvert-Lewin in that position. For me, Dan James out on the right provides more attacking threat than what I've seen from other wingers. His pace, his ability to cut back and put crosses into the far post. If you do have somebody like Mecha or Calvert-Lewin, they'll probably be trying to get on the end of those. And then you've got Nonto out on the left-hand side. So a front three of Nonto, Mecha/DCL, and Dan James. In the midfield, I would like to see, and we don't really have much other choice than this. Let me just get the Leeds squad up to make sure I've not missed anyone. For me, Longstaff and Stack have to start in the two kind of number 8 roles. There isn't much else we can do about that because we've got injuries in those positions. So to me, it's going to be Gruev, Longstaff and Stack. I hope that's enough in this game, but it's about all we can do, to be honest. Then in the defensive positions, you've got Gabriel Goodmanson and Jaden Bogle, no-brainers. They have to come in. Lucas Perry, look, people complaining about Lucas Perry. He was not given much of a chance. I think he should have done better with the Saka goal, but other than that, everything else came through a crowd of players and he saw it last minute. So that's where that kind of comes in. It's the centre-back. So Rodon, I think, yeah, definitely. In terms of Strauch, I saw more from Sebastian Bornau than I did from Jacobi Yol against Sheffield Wednesday, and that's a little bit worrying for me. So perhaps I think Strauch should stay in there with, like I said, Lucas Perry and goal. So for me, that's the lineup that we need to go for in this game. I just think if you're going to have few and far between chances, it sounds silly because DCL missed his chances in that Sheffield Wednesday game. You want somebody who's going to have that the will to go and get in at the back post. The striker's runs that Dominic Calvert-Lewin made, because he got himself in the right positions. Terrible finishes, don't get me wrong. But if you get yourself perfectly in those right positions, like he did, the runs he made, fantastic. Finishes, shocking. Although some of them were very good saves. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Mecha, I think, have more of a striker's instinct to get in the box and get into scoring positions from crosses than what Peru does. And Peru's great in the build-up, but not necessarily against a side who are going to completely sit in like Sheffield Wednesday did. So that's my lineup. That's the way that I think Newcastle are going to play against us, sitting in and playing on the break a little bit. And it's not to say that they are scared of Leeds or anything like that. Any Newcastle fans actually like Newcastle, so there's no beef here. Just talking about the game in general, I think that Eddie Howe is very clever and very pragmatic and will think, look, we've got a very much a weakened side here. We're away from home at Leeds. Leeds are going to try to play good football, and that could be our chance as Newcastle to exploit them on the break, which I think is a fair enough tactic. Hopefully we see James Justin come in and be a bench option for the weekend as well. That would be nice to have that on the bench. But realistically, we don't have anybody to come in as a central midfielder if anybody gets injured. So I think we need to sign another central midfielder as well. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching Leeds lately. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Try to be positive. We move on from those games and we look to try and pick up some more points now. Thanks for watching Leeds lately, and I'll see you in the next one.